Reflections from Torch Trust, focusing on Christian faith and sight loss.
Hello, and a warm welcome to Reflections from Torch Trust, the show that focuses on faith and disability in today's world. I'm your host, Marilyn Baker. You're joining us today at the start of Holy Week, a very eventful week in the life of Jesus, which leads up to Easter Sunday. Today is Palm Sunday, which marks Jesus' entrance into Jerusalem. Now, I'd like you to step back in time with me to the edge of a little village not far from ancient Jerusalem. Jesus is asking his disciples to go into the village where they will find a donkey. He wants them to bring the donkey back with them, telling the owners that the Lord has need of it. And so they went. They found that donkey. Slowly and humbly, Jesus rode the donkey into the great city of Jerusalem. Crowds were cheering. People were throwing palm leaves down on the road before them. This really must have been quite the spectacle. The people began to cry, "Hosanna to the Son of David! Hosanna!" The events of Palm Sunday were just the beginning of an incredibly momentous week, not just for Jesus and his disciples, but for all of us, even today.
Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. If you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Incredible words, words that shocked a lot of people at the time, and words that we find difficult today. They are words that have such power, such meaning, and we do struggle with them. If you don't struggle with them, I'm going to come and spend some time with you, because you're a far better person than I am. And I need to learn from you. Love your enemies. There's not a lot else to say here. Doing something for somebody else, not yourself. When it comes to an enemy and you've got to do something for them that you wouldn't, rather than for yourself, even harder. We find it difficult to love those that are in our churches half the time, and yet Jesus is saying, love your enemies. Love the people that you don't even know, the people that are out to hurt you. Here's the things that we sacrifice when we give up all these things: the giving up, the letting go, the doing something for something else. These are the things that we sacrifice when we do these things. The first one I want to propose to you is comfort. Abraham left everything and everyone he knew. It's not nice going out on your own. I know I find comfort from being with my family, with my friend, with the things that I know. I find comfort in my job at Torch because I know it and I can do it. And there's nothing that scares me there. It's all okay. I find comfort in it. If God said to me, I want you to leave, I want you to go here, I want you to do another job that I'm going to lead you to, I would be leaving behind comfort. I would be leaving behind, everything that actually I find a bit of comfort in, I'm relaxed in, that I'm happy in. Abraham, of course, left that comfort of his family, left that comfort of this land, all on God's say so. The second thing, and we see this with the disciples, the second thing that we sacrifice is security. The first disciples left everything once Jesus told them to follow him. All their nets were left in the boat. This was their source of income, and they just went. Their whole security. And like I said, we trust so much in the things that we have gained, the things that we own, the things that we've accomplished in our lives and whatever. We find security in that. That's who we are. That's what we do. The disciples left all of that, follow Jesus, sacrificing security. And the last thing, this turning the cheek, giving somebody your shirt once they've nicked your coat, all of this kind of thing. The one thing that forces us to sacrifice, I believe, is pride. Pride is something that none of us want to admit that we have too much of. But I'm quite sure most of us have far too much of it. We need to give some of it up. No one likes to turn the other cheek. We want to hit back. If you take my coat, you're not getting my shirt. I mean, you have a job to take my coat. I don't even own one. I certainly don't wear one. But you just have to take my shirt. But we feel hard done by. We feel wronged. We want to get even. We want, we want there to be some sort of comeuppance, some revenge, whatever. We don't want people to have the upper hand over us. Jesus says, let them get away with it. Sacrificing our pride.
Purify my heart, let me be as gold and precious silver. Purify my heart, let me be as gold, pure gold, refiner's fine. My heart's one desire is to be holy, set apart for you, Lord. I choose to be holy, set apart for you, my Master, ready to do your will. Lent ends this Thursday, and of course, in Holy Week, this is not a normal Thursday. This will be Maundy Thursday, the day of the Last Supper, where Jesus washed the feet of his disciples and established a ceremony which is known as the Eucharist. Nowadays, it is also the date of a very special church service in the UK. We have Maundy service expert Paul Leddington-Wright with us now to explain a little bit about what all this means.
The word Maundy actually comes from the Latin mandatum, which means commandment. And that comes from that verse in St. John's Gospel where Jesus says to his disciples at that Last Supper, a new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. So the service of the Royal Maundy opens with that sentence. Of course, they've been holding Maundy ceremonies in churches all over the world, in Christian churches for centuries. And in our country, there has been a link with royalty going back nearly 1,000 years. And in fact, it goes back to, I think, 1043, when King John attended a service in, I think that was Knaresborough. But coming much more up to date, the Royal Maundy service, one has to understand, is a chapel royal service because it is the monarch's service. At the heart of the service is the distribution, two distributions to the recipients. Now, the recipients have to be 70 years of age, and there are as many men and as many women as the monarchy's years of age. Now, people often say, well, who are these recipients? The recipients are people who have given a lot to the community and helped other people in all sorts of unsung ways. You often don't hear about what they do. I have just spent the last 5 or 6 days putting together a booklet which amalgamates a biography, if you like, in 3 or 4 sentences of every recipient. And it's quite interesting what some of these people have done in their lives and how hard they work and how much they continue to do, and people well into their 80s and some into their 90s. There are various details about the actual service itself which might be of interest. Firstly, to say, what are the gifts that the recipients will receive? Well, they would come in 2 purses, a red purse and a white purse. In the red purse is a £5 coin and also a 50p piece. So that adds up to £5.50. It's not a lot of money, but it's symbolic. And the money stands for what used to happen way back in the 19th century when the ceremony was held in the old Chapel Royal. And homeless and needy people would be brought in from the streets of London, and they would be given provisions. They would be given clothing, and they would be given food. And there was one monarch who went in, one of the previous queens, and she would, at the end of the ceremony, would then take off her robe and give it to the recipient she thought was most needy. So the £5.50 that is in the red purse represents £3 for the clothing that used to be given and £1.50 for the food that used to be given, and then £1 in memory of the robe that was given to the most needy, which makes £5.50. So that's the red purse. In the white purse, the recipients will get as many coins in specially minted Royal Maundy money as the monarchy's years of age. Now, Maundy money comes in sets of 10p. So there's a fourpence, a threepence, a twopence, and a penny, and a little plastic casing. Now, the coinage is actually legal tender. So each set is worth 10p. In terms of what it symbolizes, it means that recipients have sets that, if they want to pass on to their children or grandchildren, they can do that. Additionally, actually, you can sell them and they can be collector's items. So there's the symbolic value to these coins, and also a monetary value, a face value, and an actual value for a collector. So those are the 2 purses that each of the recipients will receive. During the 2 distributions, the monarch will distribute the money while the choir sings anthems to the recipients, walking around the route planned within the cathedral. So for the past few years, the service has been at St George's Chapel, Windsor. For many years, actually from about 1890, the service was held at Westminster Abbey every year. But when the Queen came to the throne, of course, they had to get the Abbey ready for the coronation in 1953. So they decided to hold the Maundy service at St Paul's Cathedral so that it wouldn't interrupt the preparations for the Queen's coronation. And having done that, I think it sowed the seed in people's minds that actually, did the service need to happen in Westminster Abbey every year? The other point was, well, all the recipients that are selected always come from the London area. Now that doesn't seem right. And so typical sort of establishment and Church of England, things happen slowly. So after having been to St Paul's Cathedral, the service went to St George's Chapel, Windsor, and then they got very bold and they went across the river and they went to Southwark Cathedral, probably barely a mile and a half from Westminster Abbey. And then after that, it went to Rochester and then to Chelmsford. So it was gradually creeping out of London. And then in 1965, there was a massive move. The service took place at Canterbury Cathedral. And it wasn't long after, with the Archbishop of Canterbury, who's Archbishop of the Southern Province, based at Canterbury, but the Archbishop of York, who's obviously head of the Northern Province, meant that the service went to York Minster. And I've had connections with Coventry Cathedral, well, actually going back to 1977 when I was the assistant organist. And then I came back in 1984 as director of music. And in 1995, we had the Royal Maundy at Coventry. And at that time, my father was the secretary of the Royal Armoury. And that was his last year. He was 70 in that year. And he had worked preparing the Royal Maundy service since 1965. He worked full time at Buckingham Palace as the establishment officer, but did the Maundy ceremony every year on the side. It was an honorary position, but he loved the ceremony. The private secretary spoke to the Queen and said, well, we haven't been to Coventry. This is Peter Wright's last year as secretary, and his son is the organist at Coventry. How about we go to Coventry? And the Queen agreed, which is why it went to Coventry in that particular year.
This is Grace here with a couple of announcements. Today's show used sound effects from freesound.org, licensed under CC BY 3.0, including small crowd cheering and clapping by Tom Leher, bird whistling single robin A by Inspector J, and donkey braying call field recording by Garuda 1982. And don't forget to tune in again on Sunday for our very special hour-long Easter episode. That's on at our usual time, 9 a.m. Back to you, Marilyn.
Well, I'm sorry to say that we're about out of time for today. If you'd like to find out more about anything to do with Torch Trust, please do call us on 01858 438 260 or email info@torchtrust.org. Until next time, from me, Marilyn, and everyone on the Reflections team, goodbye and God bless.
You've been listening to Reflections from Torch Trust.